So guys, what's up? What if Naruto was the legacy of Burden of God in DxD movie? The creation of all things, the pinnacle of ninjutsu, the very same technique that the Sage of Six Paths used to create the 9 Biju. It involved giving form to imagination to create physical forms from nothing through the application of yin chakra, then breathing life into the forms by infusing them with the essence of yang chakra, the penultimate combination of yin and yang chakra. Everyone believed God to be a sole entity, everyone, regardless of which faction they were from. It was an unspoken, unanimous assumption that the Father of Angels and Ruler of Heaven was one person. Nobody, not even the angels themselves, had ever entertained the idea that God was really two people. After all, nobody alive, not even Michael, had seen God's face. They had only heard God's words. Nobody except the first beings God created in this new world. The Shinto faction, they, too, had never seen God's face, but they understood that this universe was created through liberal use of chakra. They knew that the combination of yin-yang was what gave birth to this vast world. Most importantly, they knew that the yin-yang chakra used to create them came from two people. Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke were brothers in all but blood. Naruto led Konohagakure as its Hokage, while Sasuke protected their people from beyond the village walls as its shadow Hokage. They studied in the Shinobi Academy. Together, they served their village. Together, they saved the elemental nations by sealing away Kaguya. Together, they fought with one another every now and again, but their bond with one another was unbreakable, and it went beyond their feelings and relationship. Their lives were tied to each other, and when they die, they will die together. They didn't notice at first. Naruto married Hinata and started a family. While Sasuke did the same with Sakura, it wasn't until Tsunade had passed away and their children were approaching adulthood that the two realized they hadn't aged a day since Hagoromo imparted them with his powers. Their wives were starting to show telltale signs of age as strands of gray were visible in their hair and pointed out the two of them never showed signs of biological wear and tear. Even their strength, which usually begins to diminish as a ninja ages past their prime, had instead increased as their training was never impeded by hindrances such as back pain and weak joints, which had plagued Hiruzen and now bothered Kakashi and Gai-sensei. Naruto and Sasuke knew it wasn't long before the villagers of Konoha, and those of other hidden villages, start to notice their agelessness. The elemental nations had dealt with villains from generations past, and their bad experiences with ageless and seemingly immortal shinobi would make the world wary of the two of them, undoing the peace they had worked so hard to achieve. So they disappeared with their wives, leaving Konoha and the elemental nations in the hands of the next generation. Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura had theories as to why they seemed ageless, but nothing concrete. It wasn't until they consulted Kurama that they had an idea of what happened to them. Hagoromo had left Naruto his yang chakra and Sasuke his yin after the sealing of Kaguya, effectively binding their lives to one another. If there was one irrefutable rule of the multiverse that no being could challenge, it was balance, yin and yang, light and dark, life and death. It was impossible to tip the scale. Naruto, with his inherited Uzumaki longevity, Kurama sealed in him, and with Hagoromo's added yang chakra, had his life force enhanced to inhuman levels and was virtually immortal outside of combat. But since he could not die a natural death, neither could Sasuke, or the balance of yin-yang between them would be disrupted. Nothing except for suicide would end the lives of the two strongest shinobi. They contemplated it at first, up until their wives had torn new holes in them for even thinking of suicide. It was a cruel fate, to watch their loved ones grow old and die while they remained in their prime. But Hinata and Sakura had faith in their husbands. They overcame countless obstacles through their lives and they would overcome this one too because they had each other. At the age of 89, Hyuga Hinata died with a smile on her face, her lover tenderly holding her hand. 2 days later, Haruno Sakura followed, with Sasuke following Naruto's example. They had visited their children, under heavy disguise, to inform them of the sorrowful news, and to bring them along so that they may say their goodbyes. It wasn't until they attended Himawari's funeral 70 years later that they decided to leave the elemental nations. Their job here was done, peace had been attained and there hasn't been a war for a century and a half. They were but legends who ushered in a new era of prosperity for not just shinobi but every one of the elemental nations, recorded in history books from Kei's no Kuni to Mizu no Kuni. Their time here was over, and so, with one last look in the direction of Konoha, in true Uzumaki and Uchiha recklessness, using Sasuke's Aminate Hikara, the two strongest shinobi of the elemental nations ripped open a tear in space and stepped through, never to return. Hey, Teme, I am bored, how about a spar? Other than exploring this land, that's all we've been doing since we arrived, Dobi. Will you drop that name already? It's been what, 700 years? We've been here for 8 millennia, idiot. Yeah. Well, you start losing track of time when there isn't a sun and it's always dark. It can't be helped. We've tried jumping dimensions, but it just brings us to another part of this land. It's like this land has its own energy that draws in other energy. Wherever this is, it must be a crossroad of sorts that exists between dimensions. Like a dimensional gap. Sort of. I guess. I am telling you, Sasuke, this is going to work. Even Kurama and the others agree that we should try it out, Naruto huffed. Look, Naruto, it's one thing to create a sun like we just did, but did you forget that it took us 1,000 years of trial and error after finally getting out of the dimensional gap? Sasuke replied while pinching the bridge of his nose. Naruto's incessant ideas were annoying him. Imagine it, Sasuke, Naruto insisted, if we manage to create life, we won't be so lonely here anymore with just us and the Biju. Sasuke sighed. There was no changing Naruto once he made up his mind. He should know since Naruto spent years convincing him to return to his home village. He relented. This will take us a long time, longer than creating the sun. We need to make a planet to live on. We need to make sure that it's habitable. Ha! Naruto snorted. This will be easy as stealing a scroll from Hokage Gigi. Let's do it, Sasuke. Raising his right palm, Naruto focused his abundant yang chakra while Sasuke did the same to his left palm. They cried out in unison. Inyudan. Banbutsu Sozo, Yin-Yang release, creation of all things. They may have pumped too much chakra into the technique and gone overboard with their attempt at creating a fully habitable planet from scratch. Instead, a huge explosion of yin and yang energy, not chakra, rippled through the dimension and beyond, coalescing into pockets and clouds that slowly drifted and expanded across the void. Years from now, this accidental just-you overload would be known as the Big Bang. Over time, these pools of yin-yang energy would combine and start to take shape and become stars and planets, forming the universe, as the yin-yang energy drifted through the dimensional gap. The inherent energy existing in the gap mixed with Naruto and Sasuke's yin-yang energy, eventually giving birth to two of the most powerful creatures that will ever exist. Ophis and Trihexa. Yet, the yin-yang energy was so abundant it spread into dimensions beyond the gap. In a dimension where there was more yin than yang due to the disruption of the dimensional gap, the underworld was formed. Similarly, the opposite happened in established heaven in a dimension with more yang energy. But all of this happened over many, many years, with Naruto and Sasuke not even aware of it happening at first. Maybe they were sentimental towards the first object they created since entering this dimension. But Naruto and Sasuke decided to terraform a planet close to the original sun they created. It took a few thousand years, but the planet Naruto and Sasuke created was finally habitable by Sasuke's standards. With the help of the Bijus and liberal use of different elements, Naruto shaped the land and seas of this new planet that he called Eden. He flourished the land with flora through Mokuton, filled oceans with Suiden, raised mountains with Doton, summoned clouds with Raiden, and built the atmosphere with Futen. It was the single most irresponsible use of chakra Sasuke had seen in his long life. Don't you think it's a bit problematic to have one gigantic landmass? Sasuke questioned. It impedes biodiversity. Relax, Naruto chuckled. Did you forget how we formed this gigantic floating rock with Shibaku Tensei, planetary devastation? The crust of Eden isn't one single shell, it shifts. Over time, it'll separate the land mass into continents. Sasuke stared at Naruto for a full minute, unable to believe what just came out of Naruto's mouth. You actually thought this out. Guess you finally learned how to use your brain after 10,000 years of being around me. Asshole, idiot, emo, loser. Some things just don't change no matter how much time passes. Naruto couldn't believe what he had just heard. Come again? He asked incredulously. Sasuke gave him the stink eye. I said, he repeated, I want to try giving life to our jutsu. Naruto, unable to wrap his head around the idea of giving sentience to a technique, deadpanned at Sasuke. And how do you suppose we do that? He challenged. Unfurling a long scroll, Sasuke laid the now ancient parchment on the earth of Eden. The scroll was intricate, a far cry from the scroll Naruto swallowed to unlock the seal which kept Kurama at bay. The inscriptions were bordered by red bands, and in the center of the markings was the Uchiha clan crest. Having read a lot of them, Naruto could recognize a forbidden technique just by glancing at various markings along the scroll. To his surprise, he recognized the technique from the scroll, having seen it in action himself. This is Izanagi and Izanami, how they were invented, how to perform them, and the costs of using the two techniques. Correct. I need you to flood the scroll with yang energy. Naruto was confused. Wouldn't that just bring the scroll to life? Theoretically, That is what would happen if you infused life essence into an inanimate object. I may be able to perform the techniques using the scroll as a medium, without having to sacrifice my eyes since it is flooded with yang energy. We give sentience to the jutsu and create a body for it. And then we seal the living jutsu within the body. Naruto finished Sasuke's theory. He nodded, it might just work. Thus, the first Shinto gods, Izanagi and Izanami, were born. From Sasuke's right eye, Amaterasu the sun goddess was created. From his left, they created Tsukuyomi, the moon goddess. Finally, by combining the powers of both eyes, they gave life to the most devastating technique of all Uchiha clansmen, Susanoo, the tempestuous god of valor. The pair continued to bring life to many of their techniques. Raiden Jutsu gave birth to gods from Zeus to Thor to Apollon, Poseidon, Sobek, Ao Guang and other water-related gods were conceived from Suidan techniques. Kagutsuchi and Ares were born from Kaiten jutsus and so on. But the most devastating gods, Odin, Indra, Hades to name a few, were creations that were senjutsu given sentience and a body. They were walking forces of nature, so to speak. These new gods were scattered across Eden in their waking moments, allowing them to live as they pleased and form their own communities. None remembered how they came to be, or why they were capable of magical abilities, eventually growing powerful enough to achieve their own feats of creation and formed their separate dimensions, having grown bored of Eden. Dobi, we have a problem. Peering into the dimension that would eventually be known as heaven with his Rinnegan, Sasuke saw, for the first time, what their accidental jutsu malfunction spawned. People with wings and glowing halos. Confused people with wings and glowing halos. What's wrong, Teme? Naruto inquired. He was absent-mindedly watching Gyuki wrestle a brontosaurus while the rest of the Biju cheered him on. Remember how you said you wanted to experiment with recreating humans? Sasuke began. We may have started the process already. He went on to describe what he saw in the Yang dimension. Well, shit, Naruto muttered as eloquently as usual. What do we do? Should we introduce ourselves? Hey guys. We sorta accidentally created you. How do you feel? No, idiot, we should observe them for a while. We need to know what we created. And so, Naruto and Sasuke observed the race of glowing winged humans for 3 decades, noting that these winged people did not age past their prime. Much to Naruto's glee and Sasuke's skepticism, they also sensed a very yang-focused power within these humans. It was blatantly obvious, however, that these humans did not know what to do beyond wandering the beautiful realm they resided. Compelled to seek out something, they did not speak, did not eat, did not interact with each other. It was as if they were all just waiting for something to happen, and so, deciding to interact with the race without revealing their true identities, they contacted them as a voice, introduced themselves as God, taught them words, gave them names, and most of all, unknowingly gave them a purpose. God said that they reminded him of a woman who called herself God's angel because of their white wings. He told her story, one of a faithful woman who stopped at nothing to protect her God. A fierce warrior who protected her God's legacy even after his death. It inspired them, for they were now God's angels. They, too, would fight to protect God, for it was he who created them, accepted them, and embraced them. Despite his obvious might, they would humbly, dutifully follow the rules he laid out and serve him for eternity. Worshipping his benevolence, they would guide and protect his creations, just as he had done for them. Naruto, a voice in his head resonated. What is it, Kurama? He replied. The other tailed beasts and I, we want you to create more beings like us. Kurama hesitantly approached the subject. Naruto was confused. Why? What good would come from the attempted creation of more tailed beasts? Not tailed beasts, just big entities. If you are serious about letting us roam this land in the future along with the humans you will recreate, it is best that there are not only 9 large animals in this world. The more like us, the more likely we will be left alone, Kurama reasoned. Naruto contemplated the idea. I can see what you mean. More titanic creatures in this land would mean the humans would be used to them, and can get along with you guys. Alright, that's perfect. And so, without much thought put into it, aiming to create beats capable of matching the Biju in power and stature, Naruto and Sasuke combined their powers like so many times before, birthing the immense beings known as dragons. At the base of a set of never-ending stairs, a young angel with long, luscious silver hair knelt, his hands clasped in prayer as he communed with God. Father, I do not understand. Are we not good enough? He inquired. There was no response. He had consulted Michael first, but was dismissed with a simple sentence. We do not question Father, it is not our position, we obey, and we carry out his will. Was that all there was to being an angel of the Lord? Surely, if Father loved them he would forgive them for simply asking a question. In fact, The ever-curious Azazel has always been asking questions and not once been punished. Surely it wouldn't be damning to question Father every now and then? Lucifer. He heard a voice, no, a myriad of voices, call out to him. He lifted his head, his hazel eyes lightening up in recognition of the one who created him. Yes, Father, it's me, the silver-winged angel replied resolutely. I wish to gain insight on your actions regarding the creation of humans. He hesitated, testing the word on his tongue, carefully masking what little insecurities he carried within him ever since God announced his next project. Why must you create more? Are we, your angels, not good enough for you? Lucifer questioned his lord. In Lucifer's eyes, humans held no distinguishable difference from the apes his father created before even angels were born. They grew fur on their limbs, ate with their bare hands, and, most of all, were grounded. Child, are you jealous of Adam and Lilith? Lucifer snorted. Angels don't feel jealousy. It is a sin. I am merely curious. We are superior to humans in every way. Why are they needed? Careful, Lucifer. Pride is good, but excessive pride is just as sinful as excessive envy. Humans hold sentimental value to me. They are the most adaptable creatures I have come across in my long life. You will come to love them as I have. But it was not to be. Lucifer fell. Falling was an occurrence that the god duo did not expect. Samael was the first ever angel to fall, to the sin of gluttony. His appetite grew beyond control, so ludicrous it was that the only meals which could satisfy him were the entrails of dragons. Gaining the moniker Dragon Eater, in Sasuke's eyes, Samael was an abomination, and so he exiled Samael from heaven. Watching as the once chaste wings of white darkened to a deep ebony, Naruto and Sasuke concluded it was a side effect of having been created with Sasuke's yin essence. The process of falling mirrored that of the Sharingan's development. When love and devotion are taken away and is replaced with emptiness and hatred, God's rejection hurt Samael deeply, though not to the point where it developed into hatred for him, but rather into self-loathing, a common feeling that fallen angels are familiar with. Samael would eventually tempt Adam and Eve into eating the forbidden fruit, transforming Eden into earth. But Lucifer fell hard. His inability to accept that God loved humans as much as, if not more than, angels had led to a rapid festering of resentment in his heart. The yin essence of the Uchiha clan twisting his once great love and admiration for his father into deep, unbridled hatred. God had not rejected him, but he rejected God. His fall was so tremendous it shattered dimensional barriers, crash landing in the then undiscovered underworld. His once majestic silver feathers shriveled into leathery skin, as if cringing at what he had become, and he was not alone. Thousands more angels shared Lucifer's sentiment and betrayed the faith God placed in them, among them Beelzebub, Leviathan, Asmodeus, Baal, Belial, Mammon, and Mephistopheles. Their purpose was no longer to serve the Lord, but to defy his wishes. Thus, the race known as devils began their rule in the underworld. Not long after, yokai emerged as humans spent more time around the Biju who were eventually set free by Naruto. But not without leaving some of their chakra so that they all remained connected. Some humans were accidentally created much like the humans from his homeland, except their chakra coils were dormant, until prolonged exposure to powerful chakra changed them. Humans and yokai lived peacefully for many years, until one unfortunate conflict divided the two races. The Biju and the yokai retreated into barriers formed by chakra which allowed them to hide in plain sight, remaining secluded from humans. War had broken out between the forces of the underworld and the heavenly host. God, Naruto in particular, was disappointed in his creations. They had believed that this world they created would be free of the cycle of hatred which was finally broken in their ancestral home. The war had not escalated beyond skirmishes in certain pockets of uninhabited land on Earth. Yet humans were already caught in the crossfire between the holy and demonic armies. The humans deserve to defend themselves, Naruto decided. There is no reason they should suffer in a conflict that they hold no responsibility for. Indeed, said Sasuke while nodding his head in agreement, we cannot give them chakra though. It will turn out like the elemental nations. No, we cannot, but we can give them tools like the ones Hagoromo wielded, ones that are bound to the soul of their wielders. When their wielders pass on, they will manifest in another soul that is born. That's tedious. We should set up a system that does that without our supervision, the God system. Naruto contemplated the idea. That could work. What should we call these tools, by the way? These will be tools capable of miracles. We should call them sacred gears. I won't let you do this. Sasuke. Naruto gripped his best friend's arm. According to Sasuke, humanity was in need of salvation, and they needed a messiah to set them free. His plan was to walk among the humans as a son of God, and to help as many people as possible. His plan was one that Naruto thought was, frankly, idiotic. Shaking his head, Sasuke sighed. There's no other way, Naruto. You can't perform miracles, not in a way humans would understand. With Izanagi, I can. Naruto still would not budge. You'll be hunted. The kings of humanity will not allow one known as the King of Kings to walk free. He couldn't bear to watch his brother live a life on the run again. Sasuke scoffed. You know they can't kill me. His left eye morphed into the Rinnegan. I'll save them. Naruto. He slipped out of Naruto's grip and ripped a portal in space. Before he stepped through, he turned around and grinned. Believe it. This is it. Sasuke thought to himself. He laid limp. Nails jammed through his hands, keeping him suspended on a cross. A crucifixion. Truly, Romans are barbaric. He had allowed the Romans to capture, torture, and beat him, all for the sake of humanity's salvation. He had to die. At least, he had to make the humans believe he died. He had been crucified for hours, waiting for the moment to fake his death. Do you think he's really dead? A group of centurions whispered among themselves. One centurion stepped away from the group, hesitantly approaching Sasuke, who hung lifelessly. His helmet obscured most of his face, hiding his features from the world. But Sasuke would not mistake the verdant eyes of the man blessed with the most powerful sacred gear he and Naruto had created. The Longinus, the holy lance, capable of slaying gods, imbued with the powers of Naruto's truth-seeking balls. It was the most powerful sacred gear not because it was the most destructive, but because its capacity for growth and evolution was unmatched by any other gear. Depending on its wielder, the Longinus would respond to their will and grow more powerful over time. Indeed, this unnamed centurion had slain many enemies of the Roman Empire with the spear. It tasted the blood of Greece, of Egypt, and now, it would pierce one of its creators. His knuckles clenched the lance, hesitantly raised it, before plunging the tip into the center of Sasuke's chest. Naruto, I can't let you die. You must take up the mantle of God to protect all that we've created. I've been with you for countless years, and no one is better suited to look after our worlds. Izanagi. Before he drew his final breath, Sasuke sealed himself in the yin seal within the holy lance. As a result, the Longinus developed its own form of Izanagi, aptly named Truth Idea. Withdrawing the spear, the centurion released a breath he didn't realize he held. The emptiness in the onyx eyes of the man who hung crucified all but confirmed one thing. Jesus Christ was dead. Naruto sat alone in a forest clearing, staring into the campfire which burnt endlessly. It had been centuries since the death of Jesus, and subsequently Sasuke sealing himself within the Longinus. He had always thought death would claim them both. Now, however, he was truly immortal, as Sasuke could no longer be killed. Yet, it felt like his best friend had died and left him alone to clean up this desperate, aching world that they had created together. It was unfair. Sasuke had left him with the responsibility of God, to carry the mantle of the Lord, and to usher all races to peace. It was hard enough when it was just humans back in the elemental nations. The cycle of hatred lasted generations, passed down from Indra and Asura to Naruto and Sasuke. How long will it take to break the cycle of hatred between humans, angels, devils, fallen, yokai, vampires, dragons, gods, Buddhas, Arg? I can't even keep track of all the races on this world, not to mention the other pocket worlds that the different pantheons have created themselves. It was inevitable that Naruto would have to deal with the world's problems himself. Having seen conflict in the elemental nations play out, he had little faith that this world would find peace without his intervention. He would eventually have to reveal himself. But for now, he was tired. He wanted to rest. Stopping Lucifer and the Satans from harnessing Trihex's powers and sealing the beast away took a lot from even him. Without the Biju, he had to rely on the Longinus to combat 4 ultimate-class devils while holding Trihexa at bay. To say the 4 Satans were surprised that God himself, had descended to stop their nefarious plan was an understatement. To say they were surprised God looked not a day older than 21 was an even bigger understatement. While Naruto could handle the Satans without much effort, it was holding back a beast whose power rivaled that of the Jubi which made the battle so much more difficult. In the end, Naruto had killed the 4 devils and sealed the beast away before other entities could join the battle. When the leaders of the biblical factions arrived at the battlefield, all that was left was scorched earth, the bodies of the 4 Satans. The Longinus still lodged in Lucifer's heart, and a strange headband with metal tied to the holy lance. Everyone knew that God reclaimed the spear after the death of the Roman centurion. With no other body around and his weapon left behind, the supernatural world made the grave assumption that God had perished in battle. Coincidentally, when God fell in battle, the yokai were set in panic mode, frantically searching for their progenitors who had all disappeared overnight. Michael secured the Longinus and brought it back to heaven. His heart heavy and grieving for the loss of his father and brothers, Zekrom Bael transported the bodies of the Satans back to the underworld for burial. and Azazel walked away, head held low, feeling the pressure of sorrow deep within his chest, clenching the headband. The three parties had agreed that the death of God was a matter to be kept under wraps, as it would bring chaos if other factions and humans were to find out the Lord was dead. A hand slammed a glass on the bar top, the whiskey swirling from the force of impact. The hand gripping it was unblemished and flawless, despite the fights and years its owner has experienced. The forearm it attached to was tattooed with foreign inscriptions and runes of power that no one in Victorian England understood. The man dressed head to toe in black, his hate which sat atop a head of unkempt blonde hair, his simple button-up shirt, his form-fitting trousers, and his shining leather shoes, draped on his stool, however, was a burnt orange waistcoat and tie. It was an eccentric color that only the most eccentric man in history would don. But damn did he make orange look sexy. London was an eccentric city anyway, no one batted an eyelid at him. He sat, unnoticed, eyeing his next target for the night. That was, until a mountain of a man with black hair and violet eyes clamped down on his shoulder. He was dressed ornately, far too luxurious to be a man who frequented the seedy bars of London's underbelly. In fact, if any other person were to venture out during late nights, they would have been targets of muggings and robberies. The crooks in the bar stayed away from him though, as he exuded an aura of impenetrability. His face was lined with few wrinkles and was set in a stern expression as he gazed at the man who had yet to acknowledge him. Zekrom Bael signaled the barkeep with a single raised eyebrow and ordered a glass of whiskey himself. Naruto sighed as Zekrom pulled the chair out next to his and sat down, the chair audibly groaning from the weight it was suddenly supporting. What do you want? He was always straight to the point, just like how Zekrom liked it. It has been a while since we've shared a drink, Druid. Tell me, how has life in London been treating you? Zekrom began courteously. He was no barbarian, he was the great king of the underworld and he had to maintain his image, no matter how difficult it was whenever he drank with the eccentric man by his side. Ah, yes, that was what people like Naruto were called. Humans capable of harnessing the power of nature without succumbing to madness. There had been few extraordinary individuals in the past who communed with nature to accomplish great feats and left their marks on history. Though not always for the better, Attila the Hun was the first human driven mad by the power of Senjutsu. Then came the Mongol Temujin, who later became known as Genghis Khan, two of the bloodiest warlords in history until Naruto struck them down. Siddhartha Gautama was another man who connected with nature, but he ended up ascending to become a Buddha. Naruto took another swig of his whiskey. Well, Zekrom, since you finally decided to separate from Kurum, I'll indulge you a bit, he quipped. I beg your pardon. I don't know a Kurum nor was I married to this woman, Zekrom. I mean Zekrom, replied with a confused expression. It doesn't matter Zeke, you'll understand in a century or two. A vein bulged on Zekrom's forehead. I told you not to call me that name, he ground through clenched teeth. Why not, Zeke? Zekrom was beginning to lose his composure. It's a cute name. I am the great king of the underworld, I am not cute. Zekrom was seething at this point. Ya hear that, Jimmy? He's the great king of the underworld, Naruto addressed the barkeep. Sure did, Jack, and I bet you're the bravest captain of the Seven Seas. Enough. Zekrom snapped. I am here for information, Naruto, and I will not let you sidetrack this conversation like so many times before. You're no fun, Zeke. Very well. Naruto took one last sip from his glass before he turned to the devil. He buttoned his waistcoat and fastened his tie. I'll say it again. What do you want? I need to know where all the strays you've been killing are coming from. Naruto raised a brow. You know. He thought he was pretty covert when it came to his serial killing as the papers put it. Of course, Naruto, or would you prefer I call you Jack the Ripper? He waved the name off. That's just a name the press made up to sell more stories. I am still Naruto. Well, except to Jimmy here. He's the only person who calls me Jack. He grinned under the shadow of his fedora. Normally I would send a servant to investigate this, but this is truly troubling. The underworld hasn't seen this many strays congregating in one area. We are worried the old Satan faction might be behind this. Zekrom folded his arms across his chest. I needed to come talk to you myself. I'll let you know once I've tracked down the culprit. Naruto patted his friend on the shoulder. Don't worry. I've killed 18 strays so far and I've found a common link between all of them. Zekrom wondered what clue Naruto was hinting at before it hit him. Their organs? Yep, Naruto nodded. I didn't cut them out. Each one of the strays were already missing an organ before I killed them. The organs were corroded away by chemicals. Like Zekrom said, Naruto was the serial killer printed in the papers known as Jack the Ripper. Even if the public didn't know it, no one suspected the charming charismatic young man who delivered papers in the morning to be a ruthless killing machine. capable of efficient murder with the precision of a surgeon. In truth, the women that Naruto killed were all stray devils that started emerging in London a few months before he decided to investigate the matter. A few humans had fallen victim to the strays, but those who frequented Whitechapel were not virtuous men and women, so he wasn't too perturbed about their deaths. Naruto had dissected the bodies of the strays as a last resort to find out where they were coming from, as he could not sense the power of evil pieces within the women. It was mere coincidence and desperation which allowed him to discover that the strays were being chemically reincarnated into devils, but without the power of an evil piece stabilizing the change process, they were turned into strays. Naruto knew only one laboratory in London which could possibly produce the chemicals he found left in the bodies of the stray devils, and he was ready to smite them down. Whoever it was behind this heinous crime against nature would feel the wrath of God. Naruto paid Jimmy for the whiskey he had before getting up from his barstool. As he turned, Zekrom grabbed his arm. Right where his tattoos were inked, the devil eyed the inscriptions with an analytic gaze, trying his best to decipher the functions of the runes but only managing to understand one command. Contain. You're still keeping your power under wraps. Do you know how hard it was to track you down when you're doing that? He asked irritably. Nodding, Naruto's hat shadowed his eyes. I have my reasons. With that, he turned and walked towards the exit of the bar. By the way, the old Satan faction is probably not involved, so you can go back to whatever Pokeball you crawled out of. Screw you, Naruto. You keep bringing up these Pokeballs and I still have no clue what you're talking about. As Naruto was an immortal who had lived and trained for eons, his chakra never stopped developing, to a point where his body could no longer contain his chakra and he would unconsciously release it into the surroundings. The leaked chakra would leave a trail wherever he went, making it a simple task to track him or detect his approach. It was the biggest problem Naruto faced, as he needed stealth and anonymity much more than firepower right now. It wasn't time for God to reveal himself to the world. Thankfully, his solution lied in the mystic art the toads had taught him, Senjutsu. As long as natural chakra circulated through his pathways, he essentially blended in with nature. And how could one sense nature when nature was omnipresent and always enveloping everything in the world? All he had to do was remain in sage mode indefinitely. But it was difficult to do so alone, so the Biju agreed to be sealed within him again. Much like when Kurama had helped him gather Senjutsu when Naruto was moving, the other Biju would also do it for him, taking turns when doing so. The Biju did not all fit in the seal intended for Kurama, however. Thus he had to expand the seal to encompass his torso and original arm. As for some reason he could not extend the seal to the arm made from Hashirama's cells, he had remained in sage mode for so long that Senjutsu no longer changed his eyes into those of the toads. It had been a solution at first, but as time passed and wars between factions, races and nations began, the bloodshed and conflict tainted the ambient natural chakra of Earth. As one half of the creators of the universe, especially the one who mastered Senjutsu, Naruto's chakra influenced the natural energy which resided in the world. Unfortunately, the natural energy in the world influenced Naruto's chakra in a similar manner since he was constantly in sage mode. Naruto made it an effort to purify nature chakra as much as he could and had actually started to make progress in parts of the Caucasus region. Until 2 decades ago in the 1870s, the Industrial Revolution brought forth a wave of deforestation and pollution which further twisted natural energy. The taint was so potent that it hindered some of the combative uses of Senjutsu. Though his chakra was far from corrupt, he had found himself in a similar situation to Rock Lee, where molding natural chakra into ninjutsu would feel as if his body was ripping itself apart. It was only thanks to his body having adapted to the corrosive nature of Biju chakra that he could still utilize a few techniques, though the more destructive ones like the Rasen Shuriken caused him a great amount of pain. Still, by no means was he weak, as he was still capable of using his own chakra and Senjutsu still reinforced his body. Stepping onto the street, Naruto kept his right hand on his hat as he made his way through the bustling crowd of London to his destination. Ignoring the droplets of rain, it was always raining in London, as if God was weeping for all those who suffered injustice in this socially divided city. It makes me sick, he thought to himself. England proudly announced itself a Christian nation. Yet the Anglican Church stood idle as the nobles and aristocrats employed children as young as 5 for manual labor. What made his blood really boil was those same nobles would abuse the children at work during the day, and by night they would be praying to God for prosperity and fortune. Having not been in the 7th level of heaven in over 1,000 years, Naruto had not heard prayers for just as long, as Michael was the one who now governed the god system. Yet, the prayers from those who were truly desperate would manage to reach him, and London was the loudest city in Naruto's opinion. In fact, the laboratory he now stood in front was where one of the largest nests of suffering was located. Naruto fought back the urge to regurgitate his whiskey and dinner as his ability to sense negative emotions went haywire from the amount of despair centered in this building. It was a plain, unassuming two-story complex built with gray bricks, with no windows and only one entrance. Breaking in was impossible. But Naruto was seriously contemplating just blasting the wretched place to smithereens. He stepped up to the door and twisted the handle. It was unlocked. Naruto scoured the entire laboratory but was unsuccessful in finding anything related to the stray devils, though had been in enough of Orochimaru's labs to know that there was always a secret basement, as evil scientists could not get enough of that trope. Lo and behold, Naruto found a trap door hidden in a cabinet. The moment he lifted the trap door, he was bombarded by the earlier wave of despair and suffering. Holding back a choke, he descended. Naruto was convinced that the scientist, whoever they were more twisted than Orochimaru ever was. He skulked through the laboratory, watching as women were suspended in tanks of purple fluid, while tubes transfused chemicals from large vats into the veins of the victims. He had taken a curious glance into what was in the vats and could not hold back his vomit as it was flesh, being churned into a pasty fluid. It was unmistakably devil flesh. This scientist was mincing devils and grafting them straight into humans. Naruto, unable to process the barbaric experiments, shut his mind down and simply stalked onward, with only one goal in mind: kill the bastard who could come up with something so twisted. He eventually reached a dimly lit operation room, where the scientist in question was dissecting something. Naruto couldn't make out what it was from behind the sick man, but he honestly didn't care at that moment. The man was wearing the outfit of a medieval plague doctor, complete with the beaked mask and all-black robe. His facial features were obscured, but it didn't matter to Naruto. In the end, this man would die. The doctor turned, a look of deranged madness in his eyes. I did not expect anyone to be able to track me down, but if anyone could do it, it would be Jack the Ripper. The insane doctor raised his scalpel, pointing it at Naruto's direction. I do not appreciate you slaughtering my experiments. Naruto said nothing at first. He had told himself he would not indulge in conversation with this abomination, but he was curious. Who, or what are you? And why did you do this? His tone left no room for argument. It was the voice of a ruler who demanded answers from his subjects. Me? Oh, I am human. You may not believe me, but I am human. I was a scientist, you see, quite a celebrated one at some point. You may have heard of me. My name is Thomas Midgley, and I would have won the Nobel Prize if it wasn't for that damned woman. Midgley paused, tapping his scalpel against his temple. His pupils shrunk in unrestrained anger. Marie Curie. She is the reason for my fall from scientific greatness. The world believes radiation to be a problem to humans. Well, I will show them that the world of supernaturals are much more of a threat to humans than some radiation ever will be. You are one fucked up son of a bitch, you know that? Naruto responded. He had no sympathy for someone who went mad simply because they had their thunder stolen. I was expecting some sob story in which you were tortured by devils and want to get revenge against them, but you're more messed up than I thought. It matters not what you think, Ripper. What matters is how you will meet your end. As Midgley finished his sentence, purple wisps wafted off the tip of his scalpel. Shadow prison. Purple tendrils exploded from underneath Midgley, surging towards Naruto. The shinobi raised an eyebrow in amusement. Ho? So, you have a sacred gear, and it's one of Vritra's too. That's how you managed to kill the devils you turned into minced meat. He ducked under the first tendril, aiming for his neck before he had to weave through an onslaught of shadowy spears. Shadow Prison was a sacred gear mainly used to restrict the movement of its wielder's foes. Though this man had formed the tendrils of Vritra's shadow into spears as sharp as his scalpel. It wasn't threatening to Naruto, though, who knew the weakness of the gear as he had created it. Dashing towards a medical tray holding a dozen more scalpels, Naruto launched them at the many pipes which carried gas throughout the laboratory, before clicking his teeth hard, creating a spark. The room was set alight as the gas burned bright, illuminating the shadows and forcing Shadow Prison to disperse. Your sacred gear is very easily countered. Shadows cannot exist where there is light. That's why your laboratory has no windows and is dimly lit, isn't it? Naruto asked rhetorically. He stepped towards Midgley, who had backed up in fear now that Shadow Prison could not be used. Stay back. Don't hurt me. The scientist pleaded. Naruto made no move to stop his advance. Did you stop hurting those women when they asked you to? He replied. He raised his hand, clutching a scalpel, ready to drive the surgical knife into the trembling doctor's throat, before Midgley's fist lit up with purple flames. Just kidding. Midgley's fist impacted hard against Naruto's chest, who was blown back from the force of the scientist's punch. You made the same mistake all those devils made, assuming I only had one of Vritra's sacred gears when in reality I have two. He cackled madly, thinking Naruto was down for good, until he heard a groan. Blaze black flare as well. How is someone like you blessed with 2 sacred gears? Naruto stood, his hand covering his chest. Shit, you burned a hole in my favorite waistcoat. Do you know how difficult it is to find an orange waistcoat, asshole? Midgley snarled. You're quite durable, aren't you? To take a direct hit from Blaze black flare and stand right back up is quite commendable. Naruto merely shrugged in response. I've taken hits from people way stronger than you. Do your worst. Blaze black flare engulfed Midgley's form, a flaming revenant intent on killing his opponent and exposing the supernatural to humans. I plan on doing a lot more than my worst. The mad scientist closed the distance between them in an instant. Surprising Naruto, who had not expected such speed from a scientist, Midgley's flaming fist veered towards Naruto's cheek, forcing the shinobi to bend backwards. He had dodged the strike but still felt the heat from Midgley's flames and even had soot on his nose. Why Sasuke thought it would be a good idea to give some dragon's enten, blaze release, was a mystery to him. His leg lashed out in retaliation, kicking Midgley away from him but burning his leather shoes in the process. Oh, for fuck's sake, I am gonna have to drop by Kingsman tailoring later on, Naruto lamented on the loss of his shoes. Midgley recovered from the kick, his flames having protected him from most of the impact. He gathered Blaze black flare in one hand before slinging a wave of purple flames in Naruto's direction. With no room to evade the tsunami of toned-down Amaterasu, Naruto bit his thumb and swiped the blood across one of the inscriptions on his arm. Midgley could not see what Naruto drew from the seal, but 1 second he was convinced his opponent would be reduced to ashes, and the next his flames had been split in half, crashing harmlessly next to both sides of Naruto. In his opponent's left hand was a simple kunai, Naruto's favorite tool. Unperturbed by his enemy now wielding a blade, Midgley once again flooded the operation room with Blaze black flare, only for Naruto to cut the flames apart. Midgley choked, unable to fathom that a tiny dagger could cut through the flames of Ritra the prison dragon. That blade is capable of cutting through my flames. Is it a sacred gear? The scientist asked. Naruto chuckled in response. Not even close. A friend of mine, an idiotic swordsman with the sense of direction of an onion, once imparted me with some wisdom. He was a simple man who wielded simple swords. They had no special power, but he could cut through anything. He said it all depended on the swordsman's resolve to cut. I don't need an overpowered tool like a sacred gear to deal with scum like of you. Naruto gripped his kunai hard and swiped the space in front of him. In a split second, he unleashed his resolve to cut down his opponent and sliced through Midgley in the basement they were in. He watched as Blaze black flare receded back into its wielder, before 2 purple orbs emerged from the dead scientist and soared through the ceiling. Knowing that the sacred gears were returning to the god system and awaiting to reincarnate in their next wielders, having slashed apart the foundation holding up the basement in the laboratory above, Naruto turned and made his exit, satisfied that the twisted doctor would no longer bring harm to the people of London. A glint caught his eye before he could leave, an unexplored part of the basement which Naruto missed earlier. It was a wooden crib with the name Thomas engraved on it. There, in the crib, laid an infant who slept soundly through the rumblings of a collapsing building. With no time to spare, Naruto snatched the baby and made a swift escape from the cave-in. He emerged back onto the streets of London as the laboratory sunk into its foundation. He looked down at the tiny human being in his arms. Children should not bear punishment for the sins of their parents. This baby is innocent, but he could not care for a child. His lifestyle was nomadic, not suited for raising an infant. He had no choice but to leave the child in an orphanage. Do you know if the child has a name, sir? The orphanage mother had asked him. He remembered the name carved onto the crib in the basement. Thomas Midgley Jr., he would come to regret letting the child live. Zekrom sighed as he enjoyed the soothing waters of the bathhouse. It had been a long time since he had the opportunity of a vacation to get away from his duties as the great king of the underworld, but this fiasco which Naruto found himself wrapped up in was the perfect excuse for a quick getaway from the paperwork which hounded him for centuries. It was perfect and relaxing. Man, the bathhouses sure know how to ease a mon's worries, ain't that right, Zeke? Yes, it really does cleanse my soul. HRK. Naruto. How did you get in here? And stop calling me Zeke. Zekrom's momentary peace and tranquility was interrupted. He recoiled as he found Naruto sitting on his right, a look of bliss on the shinobi's face as the waters soothed his aching muscles from the fight with Midgley. As Zekrom moved away from Naruto, he bumped into another unexpected guest behind him. You should relax and enjoy the waters, Zeke. It feels almost as good as a massage from Mona Lisa. The man to Zekrom's left let out a perverted giggle. He had black hair with blonde bangs and a goatee. Azazel, not you too. Zekrom's outburst sent some water surging out of the bath they were in. What are you doing here, you perverted good-for-nothing fallen? Azazel winced, feigning an expression of hurt. Come on Zeke. That's no way to talk to an old buddy, stop calling me Zeke. Man, Zeke, you really need to pull that stick out your ass, said Naruto. Azazel agreed wholeheartedly. Yeah Zeke, if you like, I could give you something else to shove up your ass. I guarantee it feels a lot better than a stick. Azazel held up one fist with his pinky finger stretched, the other hand forming a hole with his index and thumb. He proceeded to put his pinky finger through the hole and repeated the action while wriggling his eyebrows suggestively. Zekrom went red as he erupted. Get out. The both of you. Naruto recounted what had happened between him and Midgley to the two supernatural leaders. Long story short, we fought. I killed him. Azazel and Zekrom both sweat dropped at the way Naruto made the long story very short. Zekrom wanted to confirm his biggest worry. You're sure the old Satan faction are unrelated to his incident? Naruto shook his head negative. Nope, not at all. This guy went mad because of some jealousy issues towards one of Azazel's associates. At this, the fallen leader perked up. Your lab partner, Marie Curie. Ah, we were much more than just lab partners. Naruto, have you ever had sex in a radioactive room? Azazel said while blushing with a perverted grin. Both Naruto and Zekrom audibly groaned, having forgotten how sex-crazed the Governor-General of Gremory was. What? Just because I get laid more than you two? Azazel fired. The two went red in the face. Fuck you Azazel. Just because I am not a horndog like you doesn't mean I don't get laid. Naruto shot back. Zekrom, on the other hand, looked embarrassed. He coughed into his fist, trying his best to keep his composure in front of these two idiots. It is true that I have not had sexual relations for years. Naruto and Azazel turned to Zekrom. Both managed to last half a second before bursting out laughing at the age-old devil. Bahahahaha. No wonder you're always so wound up, Zeke. Azazel cried while he slapped Naruto's back. Naruto guffawed at the Great King as well. Oh man. So you don't have a stick up your ass? That comment made them laugh twice as hard and Zekrom thrice as red. He roared in anger. My wife is bedridden. It would be inappropriate to have sexual relations while she is recovering from a disease fatal to devils. At that, the two stopped laughing, and actually looked somewhat apologetic for laughing at the devil. Zekrom calmed himself as the laughter died. If that is all, then I need to speak to Naruto in private regarding devil matters. His words were directed towards the fallen leader, who had done nothing but antagonize the two since he showed up. Azazel shrugged in response, leaving in a swirl of black feathers after bumping fists with Naruto. What did you need to talk about? Naruto asked the Bael Patriarch. Zekrom leaned back into his chair, looking like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. The new Satans have been elected. This, Naruto was interested in hearing. So who besides Ajuka was picked? Ah, let me guess, Sirzex. Even though he's goofy at times, there's no way the devils won't pick him since his power is on par with Ajuka's if not stronger. I have no clue who the other two are though. You are correct. Sirzex was elected the new Lucifer, while Ajuka was elected Beelzebub. Hearing those names brought back memories from 1,000 years ago, and Naruto saw himself standing over the dead bodies of 4 of his creations whom he once loved. He shook himself back to focus as Zekrom continued. Seraphal Citri was elected as the next Leviathan, leaving the position of Asmodeus to Falbium Glacia Labilas. Naruto deadpanned at Zekrom. Those two nut jobs, seriously. Do the Devil Elders expect Ajuka to do all the paperwork? At this, Zekrom started chuckling, until it got louder and louder and he was full on laughing madly. It matters not. Do you know what this means, Naruto? It means I am free from the burdens of paperwork. Naruto smiled, glad that his friend was free from burdens, even if he wasn't free from his own yet. Come. Let us celebrate my freedom, and drink till we forget how old we are. He'd deal with peace later. For now, he'd rather indulge in his friend's suggestion. Contrary to popular belief, the underworld was not much different from Earth. Bar the fact that the sky is purple and that there were no oceans. Only large lakes. Had always thought Lucifer didn't lose much when he fell from heaven. If anything, the rebellious devil had gained an entire circle of hell to himself and his race. Naruto quite enjoyed spending time in the underworld as his drinking buddy Zekrom would always bring him to the latest bars and new hotspots. The occasional odd look would be sent their way while they paraded the entertainment quarter of Lilith. But no one dared voice their dissatisfaction towards a human in their territory as he was one of Zekrom Bale's only friends, not to mention most devils dismissed him as a threat since Naruto gave off no presence at all. It had been days since they started their alcohol binge. Along the way, the new Satans had joined them in their partying, celebrating their promotion into ruling positions of their race. They signed up for the whole package: bar hopping, nightclubbing, karaoke, drinking games. Nothing related to alcohol was left out. By the end of the week, Zekrom was sent to the hospital for alcohol poisoning. Naruto and Ajuka had thrown up a week's worth of food. Falbium had passed out, though no one could tell if alcohol had anything to do with it, and Sirzex had been dragged home, a fuming Grafia pinching him by the ear. Only Serafal, the smallest in stature of their group, had managed to stay on her feet miraculously. That was fun, Naruto. We should do that again sometime, she had happily suggested. The men of their party shuddered, remembering how much alcohol her tiny body could put away. Never again, Naruto groaned while covering his mouth to stop from vomiting more. Ajuka agreed. Herc. I think I am gonna hurl again. The green-haired Satan ran to the nearest garbage bin before emptying the contents of his stomach. Z's. Amidst the chaos, Falbium slept on, uncaring of the noise his friends were making. Naruto shook his head at the lazy Satan. Legend has it only a flute from Lavender Town can wake the lazy Satan up. It had taken 2 whole days, but the 4 Satans and Naruto were fully recovered from their week-long escapade and were ready for a serious discussion. If Falbium of all people were paying attention, the ensuing conversation was probably really important. Naruto, you are one of, if not the most powerful druid and sage alive. We need your wisdom on an issue which has recently come to our attention, Sirzex began. A large number of devils are reporting that their dreams are plagued by a beast of titanic proportions which matches the description of an apocalyptic dragon from the Bible. Would you happen to know about this beast? Naruto tapped his chin in deep thought while the 4 leaders of the underworld awaited his answer. Nope, never heard of it. It truly surprised him too, as he and Sasuke had never created anything to do with dreams since neither were knowledgeable on the subject. Sure, he had lived a long time, but Naruto had spent most of that time goofing around like the knucklehead ninja he was, with the knowledge of something that he didn't create existing. Naruto's heart swelled with excitement. Do you guys know if only devils see it or do other races see the beast in their dreams too? He asked. So far, only devils have seen it. The number of devils who have seen this beast which are redheads is also abnormally higher than devils with other hair colors. Ajuka read from his notes. Have you seen it, Sirzex? The Crimson Satan looked white as a sheet. Actually, it roared at me in my dream. I almost wet the bed. Grafia had to comfort me for a while after I woke up. Naruto had to commend the man for always being able to tell embarrassing stories about himself without hesitation or shame. So what will you do, Naruto? Asked Serafal. She had yet to see the beast in her dreams. This is interesting, really interesting. Naruto exclaimed. I want to meet it. After some investigation and digging, Naruto found out that even humans, yokai, fallen, and even angels who don't usually need sleep were encountering the red dragon in their dreams. He surmised that since he was highly in tune with his subconscious mind and could enter his mindscape, he did not really dream when he slept. He turned to his tenants for suggestions. Kurama, is there any way for me to dream? To be honest with you, I don't think there is, Kurama replied. Before his host's hopes were dashed, he continued, however, that doesn't mean you can't enter someone else's dream. Remember the Yamanaka clan and their interrogators? Right. Inoichi and Ibiki had a jutsu which allowed them to enter their target's subconscious. Psycho Denshin. Psycho Mind Transmission. If I remember correctly, I'll have to look through my old scrolls to see if I copied it from when I was still Hokage. Thankfully, Naruto had never broken out of his habit of spamming shadow clones to get boring stuff done, like copying down jutsu from the village vault as a precaution should anything happen to the scrolls inside. All that was left was a willing volunteer. Sirzex-sama, what is this deviant doing in our bedroom? Grafia asked her husband in a flat voice. Naruto recoiled and winced at her words, her monotone somehow making the words sound much harsher than she intended. That's rough, Grafia-Nisan, it's not my first time staying at your palace anyways, Naruto retorted. But it is the first time you will be staying in our bedroom. Point taken, the Crimson Satan chuckled at the dynamic between his wife and his longtime friend. Naruto was an easygoing, fun-loving free spirit who did not care much for decorum. Manners, authority and etiquette. Naturally, this irked the ever-vigilant maid of the Gremory family, who believed that proper behavior should be displayed no matter the environment one finds themselves in. Took it upon herself to discipline the ancient yet juvenile druid. Naruto, in good nature and firmly believing he could handle whatever Grafia threw at him, agreed to her demands. That was the last time he would ever agree to letting Grafia torture him with lessons on table manners and proper greeting customs. She had even forced him to break his habit of inhaling ramen from a bowl within seconds. By the end of the week, Naruto had developed a healthy dose of fear towards the Queen of Lucifer's peerage. Hell hath no fury like a maid witnessing idiotic behavior, especially if that maid was one of the strongest women in hell. Naruto wants to try make contact with the Dragon of Dreams, and I am allowing him to do so with me as the conduit as I sleep, but I am not letting him do this for free, of course, he owes me a favor I can cash in anytime, Searsex explained, winking at the end of his sentence. Graphia gave her husband a long, hard stare, her silver eyes exemplifying her no-nonsense personality, her eyes narrowed. Very well. Then, I shall retire to my room in the maid quarters tonight, she turned, but stopped midway, a dangerous look aimed at her husband. Please do not waste a favor from Naruto Dono on something stupid, Searsex-sama. With that said, Graphia left the two men alone. Naruto looked to his side to see Searsex sweating a bit. Naruto had to hand it to Graphia. That woman could read her husband better than a Sharingan could. What were you going to ask as my favor? I was going to ask if you could help me with planning my next prank on Ajuka. Naruto's eyes shined with a mischievous gleam. What? That's it. Save the favor. You know the prankster Sage would never pass up an opportunity to mess with that guy. Searsex snickered knowingly. You're still sore that he beat you at shogi, aren't you? He did not beat me. I was going easy on him. I've been playing shogi since before you two were alive. There's no way he's better than me at the game. Naruto sat on an ornate chair by Searsex's bed while the devil himself laid on the silken sheets. He eyed the druid with a hint of worry in his turquoise eyes. Look, I trust you Naruto, but try not to fry my brain, yeah? It would be terrible for the underworld if their newly elected Lucifer was put out of commission so soon after his ascension. Not in the sense that they lost a powerful super devil capable of fighting pantheon gods head-on, but the embarrassment it would bring to the devil race as a whole that their Lucifer was rendered a vegetable by a human, an immortal, powerful, if not the most powerful, human, yes, but even after millennia of witnessing humans adapt and grow, the supernatural world still underestimated them. The sage understood his friend's worry. It was a delicate jutsu. Made especially difficult by his large reserves, Naruto likened it to pouring water into a narrow bottle without using a funnel. Taking extra care not to spill any water down the side of the bottle, in his case, he was trying to fill a test tube with a tsunami. He had to limit his own chakra output, which would have been impossible for the old him. Thankfully, tens of thousands of years of training, developing and experimenting with his chakra had honed his control to perfection, and he was confident that Searsex would come out unharmed from this predicament. Don't worry, he reassured the devil, you'll be fine, I promise. The hesitance as Searsex's eyes visibly eased, hearing his friend say the P-word, if Naruto promised, then he was going to come out alright. Not like your mind was normal to begin with, a vein on Searsex's head bulged. Hey. What's that supposed to mean? Naruto's mouth twisted into a wicked grin. Oh. I know all about your secret fetishes and fantasies, the Satan paled. Never would have guessed you had a thing for little sisters. I hope Zeoticus and Venilana don't get pregnant with a baby girl in the near future so you at least have time to grow out of this phase. Hey. Searsex shouted indignantly, it is not a phase. The Lucifer slammed his palm across his lips, not meaning to let that slip, but the knowing smirk and condescending look on Naruto's face sealed his fate. He groaned. Don't let Graphia know, I am afraid it's too late. How do you think I found out? The devil froze. He was staring into blank space, eyes unmoving. His mind had shut down and broke. Shit. That was just a joke. Now I am gonna have to repair his mind with psychodenshin as well. Oh well, worth it. Naruto took a deep breath, focusing intently on the internal environment of his body, molding his chakra into inten. He willed the chakra to travel to his right hand, forming a shell around it. With one last look at the unconscious Satan, Naruto placed his palm on the devil's forehead and dove into the mind of Searsex Lucifer. Naruto had been wandering the mindscape of Searsex for what felt like hours. Though he couldn't really tell how much time has elapsed since time passes differently in the subconscious mind. The Crimson Satan's subconscious took the form of a wasteland. He trudged through what was mainly in the Satan's damaged mind, trauma. Having fought in the Great War which ended in a fickle armistice. Then fighting a war against his own kin to maintain the fragile peace between the three biblical factions. Searsex carried the emotional baggage one would expect from a war veteran. As a super devil, his capability to wipe out entire battalions was often put to use when the descendants of the four original Mao were still in power. Thus most of his trauma was associated with guilt and remorse for all the lives he had taken. Still, he was the heir of the Gremory family, until he was elected Lucifer after the Civil War. Both roles implored that he maintained an aura of strength and authority. It was stressful to always keep up that front, so in an attempt to mitigate his own distress, Searsex adopted a goofy persona which his friends did not think would help. Much to their surprise, Sears's mental health slowly improved as he recovered from the post-war trauma, but it still took someone as strong as him centuries to do so. He had not gotten over his feelings, but rather had come to terms with them, and accepted that they were a part of him as much as his laid-back nature now was. Ajuka, on the other hand, had instead compartmentalized his guilt. His serious and hard-working personality made it much easier for him to rationalize his actions and cope with them. Naruto had not actively participated in the Great War apart from slaying the 4 original Mao and sealing Trihexa as god, but he had witnessed the conflict and felt the suffering of his creations through his negative empathy, and negative emotion sensing is a mouthful. Negative empathy essentially means the same thing anyways, and connection with nature through senjutsu. He understood them to an extent. The underworld civil war, however, was an entirely different ballgame. It was not really a civil war. There were no skirmishes. No strategic planning, no tactical advances and retreats. No. What began as a political movement by those who were fed up with war slowly descended into a confrontation between the old Satan faction and the new Satan faction. The old Satan faction, made up of pro-war houses of the remaining 72 pillars, were always ready to fight, whilst the new Satan faction, tired of war, wanted to end the conflict in one fell swoop. What resulted was a slaughter, as the old Satan faction could not match the might of 2 super devils with only one of their own. Naruto had not observed the civil war, and this was his first time seeing things happen through Sears's point of view. "You're getting sidetracked. We are here to find the Red Beast." Naruto nodded to himself. Kurama was right. Besides, seeing the happenings of the civil war would not change much in the grand scheme of things. How wrong that would turn out to be. Naruto continued on, searching for the section of Sears's mind which was responsible for dreams. It didn't take long, or maybe it did, for him to stumble upon a heavy mist in the wasteland which seemed to radiate an unknown source of power. The closer Naruto got, the more that power source began to resemble that of one he was familiar with, dragons. The mist surrounded him now, obscuring his view of the environment, but the silhouette of a dragon trudging through the wasteland was unmistakable. Naruto's heartbeat started to quicken in anticipation of what was to come. A dragon that he had not created. What would he be like? How strong would it be? "I think we're going to have a great fight coming up, Kurama," he mentally yelled with excitement. The fox shared his sentiment. "I hope so, Naruto, but if he's like the elder dragons we might need to be careful," the Biju replied to his partner. Naruto was having none of it, however, and took off bounding. Unable to contain his childish excitement any longer, he crouched low, palms on the ground, before pushing off with all 4 limbs, leaping through the mist. And crashing straight into the dragon's nostril. "Yow wwwch. Watch where you're going, dude, or it'll give you a piece of my mind." A booming voice resounded in the wasteland. The dragon sneezed, ejecting Naruto from his snout and onto the ground of the wasteland. The sneeze was so loud it dispersed the surrounding mist, blown away by the breath of the colossal beast. It was just as the Satans had described, a massive red dragon bigger than even Daedrig. It wasn't the biggest dragon Naruto had seen, but it was a dragon Naruto didn't create, and that was impressive. "I am covered in dragon snot. Yuck, come to think of it, I wonder how Daedrig is doing ever since being sealed in the boosted gear." He reminisced the time he and Sasuke had created the sacred gears. Naruto stood, brushing and shaking the mucus off him. He peered up at the gigantic beast. It was at least 100 meters in length and wingspan and had a wickedly sharp horn on its snout. Naruto shuddered, thinking that he was almost skewered alive by that thing. It wouldn't kill him, but it would have hurt like a bitch. Its scales were a deep dark red, the shade of blood, while the dragon's underbelly was mostly beige. It peered right back at Naruto, a defiant look in its yellow reptilian eyes. "What are you staring at, huh?" the dragon asked rudely. Naruto scratched his head. "Well, there's nothing else around here worth staring at." "Quit staring at me. It's annoying," was the response he earned. Uncaring of the dragon's complaints, Naruto shrugged. He came to see the dragon. He wasn't just going to turn and leave because the beast demanded it. "I came to meet you. My name is Naruto. Do you have a name?" The dragon took a deep breath, his chest swelling. He stood on his hind legs, raised both his arms, before curling his forearms towards his head, flexing his biceps at the puny human. "I am the dragon of dreams, and the dragon of dragons. I am the mighty great red dragon, Great Red." It bellowed its introduction at Naruto. "Tremble before my might, puny human." Naruto clapped, applauding the dragon. He could appreciate a dramatic introduction every now and then, and actually did it himself sometimes. "So, your name is Great Red? And you say you're the dragon of dreams?" he asked for clarity. The now named Great Red nodded. He would humor the human's questions as he clearly worshipped the Great Red if his applause was anything to go by. I exist in the dreams of all creatures, and the dreams of all fuels my power. I am invincible. The dragon flexed again, this time posing on his side and forcing his triceps to swell. Ah, I get it now, Naruto thought to himself. Great Red existed because of the dreams of everyone. The dragon meant it not just in the sense of the images the mind conjures while one sleeps, but also the dreams and aspirations of all creatures. That was why Naruto did not dream, because he doesn't have any aspirations, had already achieved his goal of becoming Hokage of Konoha and bringing peace to the shinobi world. In this world, he was just messing around and having fun procrastinating aimlessly. He ultimately needed to bring peace to his world, too, but he was immortal, and he had all the time in the world to bring peace. It wasn't an aspiration as it was something he knew he would accomplish one day. Dreams and aspirations were powerful driving forces, enough that they were extensions of people's willpower. A spiritual energy, just like yin chakra, Kurama realized. Great Red was born from the spiritual energy released by humans, devils, angels, and even pantheon gods over thousands of years. As almost all of creation had dreams and aspirations of their own, it was also the reason why Great Red currently only existed within dreams. He might just be as invincible as he says he is, contemplated Naruto. He didn't get much longer to ponder his thoughts however, as he had to blur away from where he was standing to dodge an unexpectedly fast claw. Oh. You're fast, and I can sense that you're strong. The dragon was pleased. He liked to fight strong opponents, which was why he liked to appear in the dreams of strong people. He also liked the color red, which was why he liked to appear in the dreams of redheads. Great Red was a simple dragon. You can sense me? Naruto was genuinely surprised. Great Red grinned while nodding at him. You aren't connected to nature when you dive into someone else's mind. If you had done this while Searsex was awake, he would be able to sense your power as well, Kurama informed him. Well, let's give him a fight. Remember, partner, since I am not limited by senjutsu in here, we can go wild. Wake up the rest of the crew. Kurama grinned in anticipation, rallying his Biju siblings, and all readied to synchronize their chakra with Naruto's. Great Red gathered his breath, before unleashing a monstrous roar, sending a wall of force careening in his opponent's direction. Before the shock wave struck Naruto, his form lit up brightly, engulfed in golden flames. The pupils in his eyes morphed into a cross, and 9 pitch-black orbs swirled into existence behind him, gathering all of his Gudadama, truth-seekers, truth-seeking orbs. He flattened the one remaining large orb to shield himself from Great Red's attack. Glancing behind him when the onslaught of force had passed, he grinned in excitement as he found that the ground that wasn't directly behind him had been crushed by the force, and that was just Great Red roaring. The Truthseeker returned to its original orb shape, before Naruto held it above his palm, readying his counterattack. Rasen Shuriken and their variants are out of the question since they're overkill, but we can still give him a taste of our might with a regular Bijudama. Let's let him have it, guys. The tailed beasts aided Naruto, the head of Kurama's chakra avatar emerging from the ground, enveloping their host. The fox avatar opened its maw, infusing the truth-seeking orb with positive and negative chakra. The ratio is 8-2, came the voice of Gyuki. I got it.
Not wanting to be outdone by Naruto, Great Red gathered and condensed magic in his throat. With their respective attacks primed and ready to fire, the two combatants let loose tremendous battle cries and unleashed their power. The fox head roared, sending out a wave of yellow chakra surging at Great Red, while the dragon howled and launched a bright crimson beam in retaliation.
The two attacks met, before Searsex's dream was engulfed in blinding white light. Panting from exhaustion, Naruto, his back firmly stuck to the ground, looked to his side, where Great Red lied on his front unmoving. The two were spent after their fight. It had gone on for a good while after their techniques collided. Mustering what little strength he had left, Great Red turned to stare at Naruto, groaning as he shifted his neck. The two maintained eye contact, mutual respect visible in their gaze. Man, you really are strong. I haven't been pushed to the brink like that in literal ages. Naruto told the dragon in between breaths, feels good to let loose every now and then. Great Red grunted in return. You're strong too. Stronger than the other creatures I've fought while in their dreams, including the one whose dream we're in right now. Naruto chuckled, knowing that while Searsex could give him a run for his money, the dragon spoke the truth. Say, once we've recovered, I think I could help give you a physical body. What do you think? He asked his new friend. I've tried it myself, and I am a dragon who can turn dreams into reality, Great Red snorted. If you manage to do it and I can't, I will gladly call you boss for the rest of eternity. He clearly didn't believe Naruto could achieve what he couldn't, since he was the Great Red. Naruto snickered, knowing that Great Red would be calling him boss by the end of the day. He had already devised a way to give the dream dragon a physical body, Once Naruto and Great Red recovered from the fight, the shinobi proceeded to pull out a brush and ink from the pockets of his trousers. When asked how those items fit in his pants, Naruto merely told the dragon it was a family secret. Fuinjutsu was Naruto's substitute after Sasuke had sealed himself within the Longinus. Naruto could still use Banbutsu Sozo to create small objects in life, but he could not do so on the scale that the six paths Yang Seal and Yin Seal in combination could. However, Naruto could seal some Yin chakra for storage, and over time, if needed, he could use the stored Yin chakra to create something big. As if the six paths Yin Seal was being used, it was how he created new sacred gears in secret, but more on that later. Since Great Red was an existence based entirely on spiritual energy, Naruto didn't need to use any Yin chakra to create a physical body for Great Red. What he needed Fuinjutsu for in this case was to draw a massive Hiraishin Shiki which would transport Great Red into the dimensional gap while infusing his form with physical energy simultaneously, and so, Naruto put brush to ground and began drawing the seal while Great Red watched with muted curiosity. Dropping his brush, Naruto wiped some non-existent sweat off his forehead in a dramatic gesture. The preparations are done, all you need to do is step into the middle of this circle. Not really one to think things through, Great Red stepped into the circle, uncaring if it was some elaborate trap by Naruto. Besides, he believed that his newly made friend would not do that. They fought and gained an understanding for each other through trading fists. As the dragon stood in the middle of the just use Shiki, Naruto bit his thumb and began weaving through a barrage of hand seals, ending on Tatsu, dragon, and slammed his right hand on the edge of the massive seal. The seal immediately began imbuing Great Red with physical energy drawn from Naruto's Yang Seal, making the dragon's eyes widen as he could feel himself start to gain a physical body. The seal was acting so quick that when the dragon turned to Naruto, he didn't manage to say anything in response, but he had seen Naruto wink and heard the sage's words. "Next time you see me you have to call me boss, remember that," was the cheery words his boss told him before the seal transported him out of the dreamscape and into the dimensional gap, leaving Naruto alone in Searzek's dream. Well then, I could use some ramen after that ordeal. He couldn't shake the feeling that had forgotten something very important about sending Great Red to the dimensional gap, but if he forgot then it probably wasn't important anyway. 1 minute, she was enjoying her silence in solitude, the next, it was shattered by a massive celebratory shout. Woohoo! Fuck yeah! The feeling of real wind as I fly, ha 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 ha! I love you, boss! For the first time since she was born, Ophis started to develop emotions, and the first one she found herself feeling was irritation. Lifting his hand from Searzek's head, Naruto peered out the window of his friend's bedroom. The sun was up, indicating that had been in Searzek's dream the entire night. That was fine though, he had a lot of fun fighting the dragon. He was distracted from his thoughts when the devil finally stirred in his sleeping and started to wake. Sitting up, Searzek let out a loud yawn while he stretched his arms and cracked his back, sighing in content afterwards. He looked around his room and found Naruto sitting on the same chair had been in last night. He couldn't remember when he fell asleep, only managing to recall that Naruto had said something so mortifying that had passed out from hearing it, had also had a really weird dream. "Good morning, how's your head feeling? Sleep well?" the sage asked. The Satan nodded slowly in response, trying to remember what the dream involved. For some reason, it was hazy and difficult to recall the details, but he was vaguely sure that he watched Naruto fight the red dragon to a stalemate. "Just how strong are you, Naruto?" he asked out of curiosity. He knew his friend was incredibly strong for a human, but he didn't know the extent of Naruto's strength. This earned him a raised brow from the druid sitting beside him. "What brought that up?" Naruto asked in return. Searzek rubbed his forehead, trying to ease the headache that had settled after trying to piece his dream together. "I dreamed that you fought the red dragon of dreams. You were using some bizarre power. Did that actually happen?" Knowing that it very well could have since Naruto's aim was to access his dreams. "No, of course not. I am just a sage or a druid or whatever you want to call me. If I was strong enough to fight a dragon you would be able to sense my power. What nonsense are you spouting?" Naruto answered with his signature kind smile. On the surface he looked calm and ready to drop bombs, but he keeps on forgetting what he wrote down. Collected. Internally he was sweating bullets that he might have blown his cover. If Searzek remembered seeing him create Great Red's physical body, he would be in trouble. Much to his hidden pleasure, Searzek dropped the subject, saying that he trusted his friend's words. He laughed, and slapped the Mao over the head, just in case, to get rid of any lingering thoughts about the dream. Unknowingly, something he said had tipped Searzek off. Despite what his wife and close friends thought, Mao Lucifer was not stupid. He trusted Naruto, which was why he dropped the subject. Despite claiming he did not fight a dragon toe-to-toe, Searsx still knew that Naruto was immensely strong, even by the standards of a druid. Even if he wasn't as strong as a dragon, he had seen the resourceful blonde man easily fight off high-class devils. Searsx should still be able to sense some of Naruto's power, but the sage gave off no presence at all. As far as he knew, Naruto did not wield any sacred gears, but his knowledge on them was second to none bar perhaps the leader of the Gremory. He knew that Naruto was old, older than even him, which was a feat not many humans alive could claim, and he realized that despite being friends with the dapper blonde for centuries, he did not know where the enigmatic ninja originated from or what his past entailed. Naruto was shrouded in mysteries, but it did not matter. He was a friend, and despite being human had never shown prejudice towards devils. He was kind, a bit lazy and procrastinated all the time, but someone you could count on when push comes to shove. He was great company and showed compassion to all, never letting race come between his bonds. Searsx smiled. Yes, it did not matter where he came from or who he was, because Naruto was as genuine as a person could get, and Searsx was 100% certain Naruto was a loving person who cherished all his friends and family. He loved everyone, just like God. The Satan giggled. He couldn't picture the lazy bastard who loved fooling around as God. Kuo was a relatively uninteresting town when compared to other large, metropolitan cities of Japan. It was spacious and rather dull, though it housed a surprisingly large population thanks to the reputation of the prestigious Kuo Academy. Kuo Academy attracted aspiring students from across Japan, and with its recent transition into a co-ed institution, more and more students and their families moved to Kuo. It was also a hub of supernatural activity. The devils, in particular, were quite invested in the town, and the other factions wanted to find out why. Rias Gremory found herself in a predicament. She was cornered, with no visible outs. Her mind raced a mile an hour, trying to come up with a strategy to help her out of the dire situation she was in. Checkmate, came a voice opposite her. Indeed, her opponent had trapped her king between the opposing queen, knight, and bishop. Any step she took would result in the capture of the king. Rias sighed, not enjoying the bitter feeling of defeat. She swallowed the bile which had risen from her gut. She really hated losing. The only reason she played chess was to train her tactical thinking in preparation for raiding games to come. She glanced at her opponent and couldn't help smiling fondly. Sona Citri was her childhood friend and the only person who she had never been able to best in a game of chess. It was a bit of a sore spot for the crimson-haired heiress, but she could always console herself with the knowledge that she had her friend beat in another department. Boobs, and she was never shy to flaunt it at the petite devil across from her. Rias folded her arms underneath her breasts, emphasizing their size and fullness. She caught a slight twitch in Sona's facial expression and knew her actions were annoying her fellow heiress. Your mastery over the game of chess is spectacular as always, Sona, she praised before graciously accepting defeat. She may hate losing, but her position as an heiress required she maintain a modicum of courtesy. You have defeated me, once again, as promised. You may lead this meeting. Sona closed her eyes and readjusted her glasses, before looking back at Rias. You flatter me, Rias, Sona responded with equal grace, but let us move on to more important matters. Indeed, Rias agreed. What did you wish to discuss? As you know, I am currently occupied with that, she finished, referring to her engagement with Riser Phoenix. I am aware, but I thought you should know that Kuo High School has just accepted a new transfer student. Ria's face remained stoic. Is that it? She probed. Why is that important? Because this student didn't go through the ordinary transfer procedures. Sona paused before she elaborated further. They were simply accepted after an application was lodged. No screening, no interview, no background check. Now that intrigued the Gremory heiress. Kuo Academy was covertly backed by devils, specifically her brother Searsx and father Zeoticus. As such, the overprotectiveness of those two idiots had led to Kuo's strict admission guidelines. Every transfer student had to be vetted through a series of interviews, background investigations, and in extreme cases, a degree of stalking, to ensure that they weren't members of hostile factions sent to sabotage the devils. It was suspicious for an individual to be accepted without going through the process. Are you worried this may be a threat? Rias pondered. Sona shook her head in response. Unlikely. On the contrary, this may be an opportunity. The raven-haired king suggested. It is safe to assume that the devils already know this person. They wouldn't allow threats to infiltrate the academy, after all. So you think they may be potential recruitment? Sona nodded. This was why she requested to lead the meeting with Rias. The two heiresses came to the human world not only to study the ways of human interaction, but to also grow their peerages. They had a first-come first-serve rule, in which whoever found a potential target would inform the other and the other party must respect it. The Gremory heiress had called dibs on Hyodo Ise, the suspected wielder of a powerful sacred gear, and Sona herself had found a sacred gear wielder in Saji Genshuru. She knew, however, that Rias needed strong pieces as soon as she could in order to break off her engagement with Riser. I will cede this target to you, Sona began in earnest. I know you don't have much time. In return, you will owe me a favor. Thank you. The red-headed devil smiled a heartfelt smile while conveying her gratitude. I hope this works out. Who is this transfer student? Sona's hand rose to her face, her fingers pushing her glasses up, a gleam of curiosity in her eyes. A young man, she spoke, going by the name of Uzumaki Naruto. Achoo. Someone, somewhere, must be talking about him. There was no other reason he would sneeze since he physically could not fall ill. It was a universal law which existed back in the elemental nations, and Naruto made sure it was a law which existed in this universe as well. Having never aged a single day ever since the day he received Hagoromo's Yang Chakra, he looked exactly like he did at 17, but instead of an orange jumpsuit, he was dressed in Kuo Academy's high school uniform, with an orange t-shirt underneath the blazer. With his spiky blonde hair and deep blue eyes, he attracted the attention of pedestrians, specifically women, who were intrigued by the possibly foreign student. While pleased that he was garnering female attention this time around, he wasn't thrilled to be attending school again. Sure, no one would be out to sabotage his learning and his scores, and he wouldn't be ostracized by the parents of his peers, and he might be popular unlike his time in Konoha, and he could make some friends who weren't as ancient and batshit crazy as he was. On second thought, school didn't seem as bad as it initially sounded, but school was still boring. He also wasn't going to school for an education. He didn't need one. He had a favor to return and there was nothing else Searsex wanted other than for Naruto to watch over his precious baby sister. Naruto still remembered when Rias Gremory was born. It was over a decade ago, but to him that may as well have been a blink, and even more ecstatic than usual Searsex delivered the news to him personally and had even suggested that he should be the young devil heiress godfather. Of course, that idea was quickly shot down by Zeoticus, Venelana, and Graphia. For obvious reasons, devils don't embrace the concept of god anything. Naruto had never met her, but he recalled the look of happiness on Searsex's face. It was radiant. Not even on his wedding day had Searsex smiled such a genuine, heartfelt smile. Naruto felt kind of bad for Graphia. It also reminded him of his inability to start another family. He left his first family back in the elemental nations and had come to terms with it, but he couldn't bring himself to do it again. As long as the lifespans were of the many supernatural presences which resided in the world he and Sasuke created, they still weren't truly immortal. Not the way he was as long as Sasuke remained sealed in the Longinus. Consumed by his thoughts, Naruto did not realize he was walking through the gates of Kuo Academy, absent-mindedly trudging past dozens of other students. He paid little attention to the stares directed at him and the whispers of wonder about him. He had craved to be in the center of attention once, but after his long life the appeal of admiration from people who didn't really matter didn't really matter. Smiling teen-aged girls were huddling in tight circles, holding hushed conversations with their friends while watching Naruto make his way to the school building, giggling every few sentences. The boys, on the other hand, looked at him with uncertainty and plain curiosity, commenting on his foreign-looking physical features. Naruto steadily made his way to the homeroom he was assigned to, ignoring the clamor that his appearance caused. Have they never seen a transfer student before? He mused. Stopping in front of a door, Naruto gripped the handle and flung it wide open, the sudden action interrupting whatever the teacher was saying to her students. All eyes turned to him. I am Uzumaki Naruto, he announced to the classroom. Nice to meet. He paused, scanning the room's occupants. He knew he was put in the same class as a sacred gear wielder, but no one stood out to him. Everyone was plain. Ah, sorry. I must be in the wrong room. He smiled awkwardly, rubbing his neck. He slid the door shut mechanically before turning to walk towards the next door. Shit. That was so uncool. He mentally berated himself. He wasn't expecting a response but got one anyways. You've been alive for eons and you're still an idiot. The familiar voice of Kurama sounded in his head. Fuck off. Kurama. Naruto stopped in front of the door one room over, before knocking on the door this time. He was pretty sure he got the right classroom this time, but he didn't want to enter. Ah, that must be our transfer, Naruto heard the teacher say as his eye twitched. The voice sounded too familiar for comfort. He prepared himself for the possibility of an old enemy trying to get revenge, but nothing could have prepared him for what was to come. The door slid open and Naruto's jaw dropped. The one who opened the door was none other than Zekrom Biel, former great king of the underworld, wearing a tailored business suit in burgundy and the biggest shit-eating grin splitting his face. Zekrom grabbed Naruto and ushered the still-shocked shinobi into the room. Now, class. Zekrom began. His voice was enthusiastic and clearly amused with the entire situation. This is your new classmate. Wah, came Naruto's intelligent response. He could vaguely hear the tailed beasts laughing uproariously in his mind. Zekrom leaned in and whispered in Naruto's ear, "When I heard you were going to attend school again, I just had to come and see it myself. I am going to get back at you for all the times you've teased me." He clapped the sage's back roughly, pushing him towards the students and speaking with a loud voice again. "Well, introduce yourself." "You, Uzumaki Naruto," was all the dumbfounded blonde could say. It was a lame introduction, but the class seemed to share Zekrom's enthusiasm, or rather the aged devil was so enthused that it was infectious and spread to his students. His cheeks were starting to burn from how long had held his wide grin, yet he just could not stop. "Is your hair natural? Are you really Japanese? What are those marks on your face? You have tattoos on your arm. Are you a punk of some sort?" "Goo. We don't need another hot blonde guy." Questions bombarded poor Naruto, who had just recovered from the shock of seeing his friend at Kuo Academy.
He looked at every face in the classroom, his eyes lingering on an average-looking brown-haired teen for an instant. Before continuing his assessment of the class, he met the gaze of a spectacled girl and watched as her eyes slowly swept down his body, before suddenly widening. Her face flushed a deep red, her breathing hitched and she started squirming in her seat, her stare held firmly below new student's belt. Naruto shuddered, feeling violated.
"That's a kitten who knows what she wants," purred Matabi. "What the fuck? It feels weird to be checked out so blatantly. Be thankful you were born a man." It was Chome who spoke. "This is what life is like for girls and women after reaching sexual maturity, sometimes even before." I know, Naruto had seen his fair share of atrocities committed by humans and various supernatural races, and had grown desensitized to the sins of greed, envy, wrath, gluttony, pride, and sloth. Crimes attributed to the sins of lust, however, were crimes he did not and could not forgive. He could forgive a murderer, a thief, a corrupt politician, even a terrorist, but he made damn sure that every rapist he came across felt the wrath of God and repented for their actions. His conversation with the tailed beasts over, he continued introducing himself to his fellow classmates. "Yes, my hair is natural. No, I am not. These are birthmarks. No, I am not a punk." He paused, contemplating whether to address the comment on him being another hot blonde guy before deciding against it. "I like ramen in the color orange. Nice to meet you all." "Very good, Uzumaki-san," Zekrom praised, before grinning wider. "How is that even possible?" "Then he already was. Now, please take your seat next to Kiryu-san by the window. Kiryu-san, please make Uzumaki-san feel comfortable." He flashed a pleasant smile at Kiryu-ika, before winking at Naruto. Naruto grit his teeth, wanting to deck his friend-turned-teacher in the jaw. Zekrom had seen the way Ika undressed Naruto with her eyes and the hunger in them. Being the devil he was, he lacked the human concept of age gaps between sexual and romantic relations so long as both parties consented, but he also knew it would make Naruto extremely uncomfortable to sit by the hormonal girl, judging by the sage's reaction to her ogling. Trudging through the aisles of desks, Naruto took his seat, casting a sideways glance at Ika only to see her send him a suggestive look while her chest heaved lightly with her face blushing furiously. He groaned. He had forgotten how annoying it was to deal with teenagers and their rampaging hormones. The major downside of being in school was having to sit through lessons on subjects he already completely understood. He probably knew more than the people teaching him, so consumed by his thoughts, Naruto drifted off into a pleasant daydream. A piece of chalk rocketed towards Naruto, snapping him out of his musing. His hand blurred to intercept the projectile, refusing to let the teacher embarrass him. What he forgot was that this lesson was taught by Zekrom, and the old devil knew that Naruto would catch the chalk. Behind the first chalk he threw, Zekrom hid a dozen smaller pieces of chalk enhanced with his power of destruction. Naruto's eyes bulged out of his sockets at his friend's blatant disregard for the other students in the class. There was no way for Naruto to catch the remaining pieces of chalk without some inhuman action and reaction, not while there were witnesses around unaware of the supernatural. He braced for impact and let the chalk hit him. Herc. The power of destruction really was painful to get hit by. Hiding his smirk behind the textbook he was reading from, Zekrom addressed the immortal sage. "Uzumaki-san, please pay attention in class." Naruto was so going to prank Zekrom and get him back for this. Sigh. For someone as old as him, high school was extremely tiring. With the school day over, Naruto decided to go grab a bite of ramen to reinvigorate himself. He made his way to a district known for its restaurants, hoping to find a nice ramen joint to establish himself as a regular. He walked up a set of stairs with a renewed vigor, determined to taste the food of gods. As he crossed the footbridge, he came across one of his classmates, namely, Hyodo Issei, the wielder of the boosted gear. He watched as a cute young girl confessed to the perverted teen and asked him out on a date before turning in Naruto's direction to leave. In her hurry home to hide her embarrassment from Issei, the girl, Amano Yuma, bumped into Naruto. She halted, turning to apologize to whomever she had hit. I am terribly sorry for running into, please forgive me. The girl bowed low as she apologized, Naruto's brow raised in amusement. Hey, it's okay. Don't worry about it, he replied kindly, be careful, okay? Yes, I will, the girl nodded affirmatively, before quickly bowing once more and rushing off the footbridge. Hey. Naruto turned to face the voice who had called out to him. Hyodo Issei was pointing a finger at him with a dark expression on his face. You're that new guy from my class, Uzumaki. That's my girlfriend, don't you dare try steal her away. Naruto rubbed his nape, laughing awkwardly. What made you think I was trying to steal her away? Issei snorted. I know the blonde-haired types like you. I bet you enjoy ruining the dreams of us normal guys. The dream of losing our virginity. The dream of feeling soft, supple opie in our hands. Naruto's sweat dropped. Look, she was just apologizing for running into me, he explained. I am not interested in her. A third person interjected the conversation between the two males. Is that so? That relieves me, a sultry voice made itself known. Standing behind Naruto was the girl he was sent to watch over, Rias Gremory. She was peering over his shoulder to look at their faces, strands of her long red hair brushing him lightly. Seeing the shade of her hair, Naruto's eyes softened. It reminded him of his mother. I know we haven't met before, but I am very much interested in you, Uzumaki-kun. The crimson-haired ruined princess smiled sweetly. My name is Rias Gremory, would you go out with me? Thanks for watching.